Welcome to the strangest story you've ever heard about eerie events that occur on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. These days often bring joy, family gatherings, and friendship, but sometimes, amidst the laughter and warm meals, something terrible lurks. The stories you're about to hear are not legends, but real events. Mysteries that will make you reconsider what you believe to be normal in life. Prepare yourself as we take you into a world of hauntings, shadows you'd never want to encounter. The story begins on a Thanksgiving night. Story 1. A horrifying night at an abandoned gas station. Jack and Anna had just begun a long journey from Philadelphia to a small town in Pennsylvania to join Anna's family for Thanksgiving. It was getting dark, and the dropping temperature made everything feel colder. The road was deserted, lined only with dense woods. Jack was focused on driving, while Anna sat next to him, wrapped in a thick coat, occasionally rubbing her hands for warmth. They chatted, their laughter and the car's headlights the only things breaking the silence of the night. But then, Jack frowned as he glanced at the fuel gauge. It was hovering on empty. "Hey, how far is the nearest gas station?" Anna asked, a hint of worry in her voice. "About 10 miles ahead," Jack replied, trying to sound calm. "We just need to make it there." About 10 minutes later, they saw an old sign reading Gulf Gas Station. Its letters faded with time. The station looked run down, dimly lit by faint neon lights that only added to the eerie atmosphere. Jack and Anna exchanged a hesitant glance. There were no cars, no sounds. The station seemed to have been abandoned long ago. "Shall we give it a try?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with doubt. None of it." Managing a weak smile. "Let's just get in and out quickly. It should be fine." Jack parked near the pump, put on his coat, and hurried into the store. The door creaked loudly, adding to the eeriness as he pushed it open. Inside, the store was dark, lit only by a dim ceiling light in the middle of the room. Jack looked around but saw no one. "Hello," Jack called out, his voice echoing in the emptiness. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his spine as silence enveloped him. He approached the counter, looking around, hoping to find someone. Then, a rustling sound came from the back. Jack's heart raced. He turned to see the restroom door slightly ajar, its interior pitch black. "Is anyone there?" he asked, his voice trembling. But there was no reply, only silence. Gathering his courage, Jack stepped closer to the restroom door. Suddenly, he heard a whisper, faint as the wind. "Jack!" He froze, his eyes fixed on the darkness in the restroom. He glanced back at the exit, his instinct urging him to flee. But curiosity drove him forward. "Jack!" The voice called again, clearer this time, as though someone were right behind him. Unable to take it any longer, Jack bolted out of the store, his heart pounding. He jumped into the car, breathless. Anna looked at him, alarmed. "What happened?" "There was no one in there, but someone called my name," Jack replied, his breath ragged, hands shaking as he started the car. Anna, now scared too, looked back at the darkness surrounding the gas station. But before she could say anything, Jack sped off, eager to leave that place behind. A few weeks later, one late night, Jack lay awake, still haunted by the strange experience at the gas station. He decided to look it up and started researching online. After some searching, he came across an article that made his blood run cold. Gulf Gas Station employee murdered. Body found behind store. Jack read through the article, feeling a growing sense of horror as he realized the timing of his visit matched the anniversary of the employee's disappearance. According to family and friends, the employee was a 33-year-old man of Indian descent who was brutally murdered at his workplace. The killer had never been caught, and the case remained unsolved. Jack shivered. The image of the half-open restroom door, the mysterious voice calling his name, it all made sense. He realized that the voice could have belonged to the spirit of the murdered employee, trapped there, waiting for someone to bring him justice. Story 2. The strange man at Walmart on Black Friday. Lucas and his two younger brothers, Daniel and Matt, decided to spend Black Friday night hunting for electronics bargains at Walmart. They had planned it for weeks and were excited about finding some favorite games at a low price. However, none of them anticipated what would happen that night. Walmart was a madhouse, with people crammed into every corner. Shelves overflowed with items. Laughter and shouting filled the air, and the atmosphere grew more suffocating as crowds battled over every item. Lucas had to nudge Matt, who was almost stuck among the crowd. "Lucas, let's head to the game section," Daniel urged, his eyes alight with excitement. "Sure, let's go, but stay close. It's easy to get lost in here," Lucas warned, his tone cautious. The three made their way to the gaming section, but as they arrived, Lucas noticed something strange. A tall, older man with gray, disheveled hair stood not far away, staring intently at Lucas with a peculiar look. The man approached Lucas, a foul odor emanating from him, causing Lucas to step back. "Do you like video games?" he asked in a raspy voice. Lucas hesitantly nodded, trying to keep his distance. "My son likes games too. Maybe you should come to our house and play with him," he said. With a chilling, challenging smile, Lucas felt a shiver run through him. I'm not from around here. Just here to buy a few things," he replied, his voice shaky, signaling his brothers to move elsewhere. He led his brothers away, hoping to lose the man in the crowd. When they reached the clothing section, he whispered to them, "Listen, if anything feels wrong, tell me immediately. Don't leave my side." Matt looked at him, surprised. "What's going on?" "Everything's fine, isn't it?" Lucas just nodded and urged them to keep shopping. After selecting a few items, they headed to the checkout, where a long line awaited. As they waited, Lucas scanned through a rack of shirts nearby. Suddenly, a hand gripped his arm tightly, pulling him back. Startled, he turned to face the vacant, haunted eyes of the same man. His gaze was hollow yet mesmerizing, making Lucas feel as though he were in a trance. Let me go," Lucas shouted, trying to pull free. People around them turned to look, some hesitating to help, but the man released him and turned away. Lucas stood, gasping, feeling the lingering coldness of the man's grip on his arm. "What happened?" Daniel asked, pale with fear. "Nothing, just a stranger." Lucas tried to reassure him, though still shaken. He decided not to tell his brothers to avoid scaring them. As they walked out of Walmart and headed to Daniel's Camaro, Lucas glanced back. There, standing at the entrance, was the man, his eyes following Lucas. Lucas quickened his pace, almost running to the car while trying to stay calm. Once he was in his seat and buckled up, he couldn't resist looking back one last time. The man was still there, his unsettling gaze fixed on Lucas through the car window. "Lucas, look, he's still staring at us," Matt whispered, also noticing the man. "He's probably crazy. Just ignore him," Lucas replied, trying to calm himself. The three drove off into the darkness, engulfed in silence. That was the last time Lucas saw the strange man. But every time he recalls that hollow gaze, he shudders, not just from the fear of a stranger, but the feeling that the man harbored something far more terrifying, something Lucas never wanted to uncover. Story 3. A strange encounter at a silent gas station. On Black Friday, 2013, James decided to leave home at 3 a.m. to buy a 9-foot artificial Christmas tree at Home Depot, hoping to get a good deal. While most people flocked to major stores like Best Buy or Walmart, he chose Home Depot for the attractive discounts. Little did he know that on a seemingly ordinary night, he would become part of a haunting tale that would linger with him for life. The gas station James stopped at was nearly empty. There was only one truck parked in the distance, with a man standing beside it, smoking and watching James. James only intended to stop briefly to refuel his SUV. As he hadn't visited that station in a while, the atmosphere was strangely quiet, with no sound but the fuel trickling into the tank. As he entered the gas station store to pay, an unsettling feeling washed over him. The place was empty, with no one in sight except the man outside. Trying to ignore it, he proceeded to pay, but as he reached for his wallet, he felt an inexplicable urge to look around. No employee stood at the counter. Just an empty chair and a dust-covered counter. "Hello, is anyone here?" James called out. Doubtful. There was no reply. He continued waiting, thinking maybe the employee was on a break. When he turned back to refuel, he noticed the back door of the store was locked tight. No exit visible. He felt a little uneasy, but continued with his business. "This is strange. No one here at all," he thought, glancing around. The feeling that something was wrong filled his mind. A few minutes later, he returned to his car, hoping it was all a coincidence. But as he got into his seat and prepared to drive away, he heard a faint sound from the forest behind the station. A muffled voice called from a distance. "Hey, hey." James couldn't help but shiver. A chill ran down his spine as he clearly heard every word in the silence. He turned to look into the dark forest and saw a shadowy figure lurking behind the trees. A man, dressed in black, stood among the trees, staring intently at him. James quickly locked his car and turned the key, speeding away without a second thought. "What the hell?" James muttered, pressing the gas pedal harder, desperate to leave. He didn't say anything to his friend in the car, but his expression revealed his unease. But when they reached the next gas station, James started feeling uneasy again. A man in a black sweater parked behind his car, staring intently at him. His eyes, cold and detached, made James feel something was terribly wrong. It was as if the man had been watching him since he left the previous station. When James approached his car, the man's gaze stayed fixed on him. James couldn't hold back anymore and asked, "Is there a problem?" The man quietly turned away without responding, his eyes still glued to James in a chilling stare. James felt trapped under that gaze and just wanted to get out of there as fast as he could. When he finished refueling and got back into his car, the man stood motionless, watching him. James felt as though something dark surrounded the gas station, but he didn't know how to explain it. He drove away in silence, feeling haunted by the gas station experience. The next day, James received a call from the police. They informed him that a 33-year-old employee had been murdered just after working his night shift at the gas station. The police suspected the murderer was the man James had encountered, whom he thought was just an employee leaving his shift. But in reality, this man had killed the employee and hidden his body in the woods before stalking James without being caught. Since then, James hasn't been able to shake the feeling that something continues to watch him. He can still picture the cold face of that man, even years later. Story 4. The Thanksgiving Ghost in the House. Thanksgiving 2015. Emily's family decided to hold a cozy dinner at her suburban Chicago home. The whole family would gather, enjoy traditional food, and watch football. The warm holiday atmosphere always made Emily feel happy and safe. But what she didn't expect was a strange and frightening event on Thanksgiving night, which would leave her with a lifelong fear. Emily and her husband, Jack, planned a complete dinner with family and close friends. During the dinner, everyone laughed, played games, and shared memories. But only when night fell did something strange happen. A frightening event that would make Emily never feel safe in her own home again. As everyone sat around the table after dinner, chatting, Emily noticed her 12-year-old daughter, Lila, standing by the living room window. Lila stared silently into the dark outside. Emily wondered if her daughter was thinking sad thoughts, as Lila rarely showed her emotions openly. "What are you looking at?" Emily asked, but Lila didn't answer, her eyes still fixed on the night. When Emily approached and called her, Lila turned and said something that made her mother's heart stop. "Mom, someone is standing outside the window." Emily was stunned, not believing her ears. She glanced out the window, seeing only darkness and the distant lights of houses. She looked at Lila and forced a smile. "Lila, don't joke around. There's no one there." But after a while, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She turned to Jack and her friends and said, "Everyone, I feel a bit strange in the house tonight." They laughed, reassuring her, but the unease didn't leave her. She decided to check upstairs to see if anything unusual was happening in the house. As she reached the top of the stairs, suddenly, a loud sound echoed from downstairs, as if someone were walking in the living room. The strange feeling returned, this time turning into real fear. Jack, what's happening? Emily shouted. Jack hurried down the stairs. Emily, though scared, couldn't stay still. She grabbed a flashlight and followed him. When they reached the living room, they saw a strange sight. The chairs in the room had been moved as if someone had just sat down and stood up. It must have been Lila playing around, Jack said, but Emily didn't believe it. She felt something was very wrong. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered in the quiet, "Mom, someone's in my room." They rushed upstairs. When Emily entered Lila's room, she was horrified to see a shadow in the corner. The shadow wasn't human, but a blurry shape without a clear outline. Like a ghost. It was a fleeting image, too fast to discern, but it made their hearts stop. "Lila, are you all right?" Emily shouted. Lila, terrified, backed away, pointing at the corner. Someone was standing there, she said, tears in her eyes. "Mom, I'm scared." Emily and Jack quickly turned on the lights, but the shadow was gone. They stood there, unsure of what to do. No one in the house slept that night. Emily felt as though someone was watching her from the shadows, and everyone was haunted by a sense of cold unease. They decided to call a psychic to investigate, and when he arrived, he immediately sensed something unusual. "This house is haunted," the psychic said solemnly. "It's the spirit of someone who has passed, unable to find peace." The family held a cleansing ceremony, but the spirit didn't leave. In the nights that followed, Emily still felt its presence in the house. She would hear strange noises, and sometimes soft footsteps echoed behind her. Despite all efforts to drive it away, the fear continued to haunt Emily and her family for years. Every Thanksgiving, when the family gathered, they felt a chill run down their spines, as if someone was watching them from the darkness. So, these strange stories come to an end, but the question remains, do these ghosts really exist? Or are they merely products of our imagination? Whether you believe or not, these events happened and could happen to any of us. The glances from the dark, the unexplainable sounds, or even the presence of unlaid souls, all leave a chilling mark on everyone's mind. And even as this story ends, do you dare sleep peacefully on the next holiday night? Be careful, for perhaps a shadow is standing outside your window, waiting.